Good morning, Purdue University and listeners around the country. My name is Matt Geely, and this is the first ever edition of Next Point Wins. How are we doing this morning? It's 10 a.m. on the dot. We have a great show for you today. To begin, I'd like to say welcome. My name is Matt Geely. If you'd like to contact the show, you may. You can email nextptwins@gmail.com with any questions, comments, concerns, or topics you want to cover. Also, you can tweet directly at me at Matt_Geely. That's Matt_GIGLI. We are live here in West Lafayette, Indiana. This is WCCR Radio. Thank you for listening this morning as you begin your Wednesday. Let me give you a little bit of a background about myself. I am a sophomore here at Purdue University. I currently help intern with Purdue Sports as I do work for them. Also, worth noting that this is my first ever podcast, so we're going to go through the ups and downs together. And we're going to see if we can make something magical. So I want to get to know my listeners. I want you guys to get to know me. Some ground rules for the podcast. Nothing is off limits topic-wise. All sports can be covered. If there's a topic I don't know much about, I'll try to give you my best interpretation of what's going on. Hopefully through this podcast, everyone will get a little bit of their daily sports in. It's an hour long. Today we're going to talk NCAA hoops. We're going to talk Purdue sports. We're also going to cover a little bit of the NFL, a lot to do with the NBA, and then we have some miscellaneous stuff thrown in there too for anybody who's not really sports heavy, who's listening in on their walk to class or drive into work this morning. Coming out of this podcast, I hope that you get some more sports knowledge. I'm obviously not very qualified, so we're just going to talk, and I'm going to give you my take on some things. Hopefully this sparks some conversation amongst co-workers or friends or family. We're going to dive into some of the big topics, then also some of the topics that maybe some people aren't talking about much. Please email me all questions and answers. Love to hear. Hopefully in the next couple episodes we can start getting some phone calls, some callers calling in. I want to see what kind of feedback I get after this first day. This podcast, Next Point Wins, will be held every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. here at WCCR Radio, and then the podcast will be posted shortly following the show. That can be heard on YouTube as well as SoundCloud. So if you follow me on Twitter, I'll be sending out links to those podcasts. If you can't catch the whole show, I highly recommend you fill in on what you missed. For those listening live, if you'd like to tweet me, you may. I'll be answering tweets periodically throughout. I also have a poll question up for today. That can be seen on Twitter. It's Matt_Geely, Gigli. If you'd like to answer the poll. The question topic of the day is, if you are the Boston Celtics, who would you rather acquire? Jimmy Butler or Carmelo Anthony? I posted this early this morning. We already have quite a few people tapping into the poll and giving me their response. I'll read the results periodically throughout this podcast. Let's begin by going through what I watched last night, and there was about 4 games on that really caught my attention, 2 of which were because they're teams that I personally root for. I guess I should let you guys know up front, I am a Purdue sports fan, here a student at Purdue. Also, when it comes to hockey, I cheer for the Blackhawks, Chicago Blackhawks. When it comes to football, it's the Chicago Bears. NBA basketball, I would have to say the Chicago Bulls, but to be honest, I don't really follow NBA all that closely. You know, I'm very up to date on what's going on in the NBA, but as far as sitting down and watching a full game, that just doesn't really happen for me. I find it just as easy to watch the highlights. As we all know, the NBA is on All-Star break at the moment, but even with that, there's been a lot of noise that we will cover shortly. Baseball, Chicago White Sox, so if you're starting to see the trend, a lot of Chicago teams. I'm going to try to give you some non-biased opinions, but sometimes my own sporting interest in who I root for will bleed into the topic. That should give you guys some openings to maybe respond to me on why you think I'm wrong or right. When you do tweet me questions or email me questions, I ask that you please just put your first name and where you're from. That way I can give you credit on air. So if you can let me know who this comes from, that'll be a lot easier for me to give you the credit that is due, either good or bad. So last night I began my night by watching 6 o'clock Purdue men's basketball at Penn State. That was a wild effort by Purdue. Came out to a pretty slow start, I'd have to say, but turned it up shortly in the second half. Caleb Biggie Swanigan, one of the National Player of the Year candidates, had a slow game. Not his best game to date, but, you know, when you still are one rebound shy of a double-double, you're doing something right. And got into some little bit of foul trouble in the first half, not much. Found himself only playing around 11 minutes in that first half. So it just so happened that Purdue started going on a little bit of a run to get back in the game. If you missed it, Purdue was down big early, double digits at a couple times. Made a little bit of a run with Caleb on the bench. So that's where he stayed to finish out the half, but came out in the second half, started, and contributed on the offensive glass, and he had a couple really nice assists that got Purdue going and got them rolling. That was a game that went into overtime, and in overtime it was Ryan Klein who really stepped in, hit a couple big threes. P.J. Thompson was clutch down the stretch, and Purdue outlasted Penn State in overtime to win the game. Also following that, I watched the Minnesota Wild take on the Chicago Blackhawks, so I was lucky enough to kind of go back to back with two of my favorite teams. Blackhawks won a thriller last night thanks to 3 goals by Jonathan Toews, one being an empty netter to end the game. Minnesota Wild sit ahead of the Blackhawks in the standings, so it was an important game for the Blackhawks to try to get back in. It was one of the first times they've beaten the Wild in a long time, so that was nice to see. While watching that game, I was kind of flipping around a little bit. I saw quite a bit actually, of the IU-Iowa game, men's basketball game, and I actually found myself stuck on East Carolina versus Tulane. Two teams that unless they make a run in their conference tournament, I don't see either one making the tourney, but it was a pretty good game where Tulane got up early and by a lot, and East Carolina kind of battled back and ended up getting their first road win of the year. So pretty late in the season to get your first road win, but that's exactly what they did. Let's take a look at the scoreboard from last night to kind of get you up to date on what happened around the sporting world. We'll start with NCAA basketball. As I mentioned, number 14th ranked Purdue, 74, Penn State 70. So Purdue got the win. Another ranked matchup in the NCAA men's basketball. Number 13 Florida at home beat South Carolina pretty handedly, 81-66. Baylor, number 9th ranked Baylor, was also at home. They beat a pretty good Oklahoma team, 60-54. So that was a good game. And to round out the ranked games from last night, it was number 25, Wichita State, 109, Evansville, 83, and then number 11, Kentucky, 72, Missouri, 62. In the NCAA women's basketball, it was Kansas State with the upset at home over 16th ranked Oklahoma, 79-71. In the NHL, as I already mentioned, the Blackhawks beat the Wild 5-3. That was a road win for the Hawks. Also at home, the Lightning over the Edmonton Oilers 4-1. Toronto Maple Leafs over the Jets 5-4. Pittsburgh Penguins 3-1 over the Hurricanes. Montreal Canadiens 3-2 in a shootout over the Rangers. And last, the Ottawa Senators 2, New Jersey Devils 1. So that's kind of a look at your scoreboard. As I mentioned earlier, the poll question, go on Twitter, Matt_Geely. If you are the Boston Celtics, would you rather acquire Carmelo Anthony or Jimmy Butler? Two of the big names being mentioned for the Boston Celtics to trade for. And I'll have my take on that a little later. I'm going to give everybody a chance to go online and vote on that. Email the show, nextptwins@gmail.com. First name and location so I can give you the credit you deserve. Also on tap for today, we have some NFL talk with trade rumors starting to flurry around, and those always famous mock drafts are coming out. I'll have my take on the mock drafts and trade information come up a little later. Also, we will recap all the NCAA hoop games from last night. I already mentioned the Purdue game. We'll go in a little bit more into detail there, as well as the Iowa-Indiana game, a game that Indiana desperately needed. They did not get. Iowa beat them at home in overtime. We'll talk Tom Crean, job security. We'll talk their hopes for making it to the NCAA tournament, as well as one of the broadcasters who was on the call last night, Dan Dockage. I'm going to give you my, I guess you could call it a hot take. Not really into the hot take business, to be honest with you. I prefer just to call it a nice opinion, and that's what it's going to be, a nice opinion of Dan Dockage. That will be coming up shortly as well. We'll go a little bit more in depth in the Purdue wrestling, as they are now ranked top 25. They came in at number 25 in the poll. First time all year, second time in the career of head coach Tony Ersland. I've had the pleasure of calling many of those home Purdue wrestling matches for BTN Student U as the play-by-play and color commentator for that network. So I've gotten to know this Purdue wrestling team. Very excited for them. This is an exciting time as they head into the Big Ten championship tournament. We've got a couple guys on that squad who have a great chance of showing out well and representing Purdue in that tournament. Purdue women's basketball is going to go live Thursday night at Minnesota. They're another bubble team that we'll talk about. Need more quality wins. Right now they're trying to get one of those top 4 spots in the Big Ten to get that double bye for the Big Ten tournament. They're sitting just on the outside, but with a little help, they still have a chance of getting in, but they got to win out as they have 2 games left. They're going to be at Minnesota and finish the year at home here in West Lafayette, Indiana, as they will be taking on Northwestern in that one. It's senior day. 2 games they need to win, desperately need to win. They've been playing well of late. Got the chance to watch them and work for Big Ten Network last weekend as they came back from a pretty sizable deficit in the second half to win the game. So we'll see what we can get out of that ladies basketball team Thursday night. Also want to let you all know that I am currently sitting in a room with I'd have to say, close to 1,000 records, maybe more, and just as many CDs. It's a pretty cool little layout I got here. I'm in the basement of a building on campus at Purdue University, one of the dorms. If you want to stop by and say hi, feel free to. And I think I'm going to start calling this room the turntable, because I got this giant turntable above my head that, you know, if something tips or falls, we might have some dead air for a while, because I am having a tough time understanding how that's connected to this box. I'm trying to describe it for you guys. But yeah, so we're gonna call this place the turntable, and we're gonna see what all we can get out of that. I'm gonna take a quick break here. It's 14 after the hour. You are listening to Next Point Wins on WCCR Purdue. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is WCCR Radio at Purdue University. My name is Matthew Geely. This is Next Point Win Sports Radio Show / podcast. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. If you're just tuning in, we have our poll question up on Twitter at Matt_Geely, Gigli. If you'd like to answer that. Currently, the question is, if you are the Boston Celtics, would you rather acquire Carmelo Anthony or Jimmy Butler? Two shooting guards, Carmelo from the New York Knicks, Jimmy Butler from the Chicago Bulls. Both highly touted as some of the best shooters in the game. And personally, I think that the answer is quite simple. And it looks like at the moment, I'm in the minority on this one. I was the Boston Celtics. I'm taking Carmelo Anthony. And to me, it's really not even that close. Because with both these players, they're fairly similar as far as their styles of play. Around the same size. One of them a little more proven than the other, and I mean that in the right way as I say that. I would have to put Carmelo as a better shooter, Jimmy a better defender, which with Carmelo, that's not really saying much. Carmelo knows he doesn't play defense. He has to. I mean, it's been said thousands of times by thousands of people. Carmelo does not play defense. Jimmy doesn't play a whole lot of defense himself, but he sure plays more than Carmelo. But if you're the Celtics, what are you looking for? Because I think that's the biggest question. Are you looking for a player who is going to come in and instantly spark your team, spark your offense, both? Contract-wise, both fairly similar players as far as guaranteed money and contract extension. Carmelo's going to be a little bit more expensive than Jimmy. But I think Jimmy's contract is up well before Carmelo's is. I'll double check that here as I continue to talk. But I'm taking Carmelo just on the fact that if I'm the Celtics, I'm looking for a shooter. Now, I'm looking for a guy who can come in and give me 20, 25 a night. But with Carmelo on a team like the Celtics, you don't really need that. You can just as easily get somebody on your squad who is a better shooter and a better teammate altogether. But with Carmelo, you're going to get what you're going to get. You see it. With Jimmy, there's potential, and it's frustrating as a fan to see that potential and it not being properly used. So, as I said, I'm going to take Carmelo, keep the votes coming in. Right now we're at 78% say Jimmy Butler. I'm curious to see if that changes here over the next 40 minutes or so. It's currently 20 after the hour. If you're on your way to class for 10:30, you better wake up and get moving or else you're going to be late. So let's move into our next topic. And it's one that I'm pretty excited about and one that I'm pretty passionate about. And it's this whole Jimmy Garoppolo situation. Jimmy Garoppolo, the backup quarterback currently for the Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. A lot of talk in the media about, where's Jimmy going to go? Is he going to be traded? Are the Patriots going to find a way to keep him? I don't see any situation, if you're the New England Patriots, why you would keep Jimmy Garoppolo. I understand that if you don't get the exact package you want, you might think about it. But, this is a guy whose stock is, it's about as high as you can get. You play 2 games, you play well in those 2 games, exceptionally well. He could go on next year and never play if Tom Brady is healthy throughout. So his stock falls because he now is another year older. We haven't seen him in a year. I think that the time to trade Jimmy is now, and you got another quarterback behind him to back up Tom Brady. So I don't see any situation where he stays in New England. That being said, if it was my franchise, I don't want him. Now, I say that, but I immediately think, okay, there's a situation I would want him, and that is if I am not at a spot in the draft where I think I'm going to get a young quarterback. So, like, if I'm a top 5 pick, I am not touching Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't want any part of him because you can't go off of 2 games. And I know it's more proof than any of these rookie quarterbacks coming out of college, but I think you take the risk. And if I am by no means an NFL GM, but if I was, I'm taking a quarterback every single year in the draft. Every year I'm taking one. 2nd round, 3rd round, I don't care where, I am taking a quarterback because you never know when you're going to strike gold with a QB. And I mean, let's face it, this is a quarterback league. This is an offensive league. So it's important that you get the right guy under center to lead your team. I mean, look at the Super Bowl teams. Tom Brady, Matt Ryan. I mean, 2 of the best at the position. Look in the playoffs in general. Dak Prescott, rookie sensation. Aaron Rodgers, who was lights out, on fire throughout the playoffs. Ben Roethlisberger, proven winner. Hall of Famer, in my opinion. He's got to be a Hall of Famer. Matt Ryan, Tom Brady. I mean, just to name a few of, it's crazy how much of a quarterback league this is. If you don't have a good quarterback, you have a hard time being successful. You know, I just mentioned Dak Prescott, and that kind of brings me to my next point of Tony Romo, another quarterback who, where does he go now? Kind of like Jimmy Garoppolo or a Kirk Cousins. I mean, these are 3 quarterbacks who future is really up in the air, and each guy with a little bit of a different situation. For Tony Romo, obviously he wants to be released, because if he's released, he gets to choose. He gets to go where he thinks that he has the best chance of being successful. Because, let's be honest, can I count on Tony Romo for a full season? No way. Not even close. But can I count on him to possibly stay somewhat healthy and win me some games and be a leader? As Jerry Jones would say, he's a leader. Yeah, we know, Jerry. And that is why you won't trade him. And I don't get it. I don't understand. I'm going to put on my GM goggles again. Why would you ever just release players? Thank you for listening to this week's pilot podcast episode of Next Point Wins. Tune in next Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern on WCCR Radio. The first full-hour podcast will be available shortly after the conclusion of the show.